The Porsche 911 is one of the all-time greats. The breadth of its ability is seemingly limitless, unless you want to use it as a camper van, of course. You can track it, you can have a leisurely drive in the countryside, use it as a daily, rally it, or simply look at it. The reason for this is simple. There's a 911 for everyone.
For example, if you want a racing car, there's the GT3 RS. If you want something simply to pose in, there's a base model Carrera Cabriolet waiting just for you. However, of the 991.1 generation 911s, the best all-rounder wasn't the GT3, it wasn't the Turbo, it wasn't even the Carrera S. It was the one in the middle, the slightly tweaked, the more powerful GTS. And now, there's a new one.
The GTS cars get their name from a race car, the 904 Carrera GTS. A few road cars were made, but in reality it was a replacement for the 718 races of the day. The plastic Porsches, so named for their construction, and their successors did really well for the company, kicking ass on tracks all over the world. Without the 904 there wouldn't have been a 917, and no outright Le Mans victory for Stuttgart.
That was then, and this is now. You see, in the olden days, the GTS cars were lovingly pored over by engineers to make that special model just a little bit better, a little bit more satisfying to drive, but still live-withable. Nowadays, Porsche has a more GTS all the things mentality, which means you can get a Cayenne GTS. Does rather take the shine off the special badge, doesn't it? It's a bit like Mercedes putting AMG stuff in all of the cars.
Moan as I might, the 911 GTS does promise many wonderful things. While the last one was naturally aspirated, this one has a tweaked version of the current 911's 3-litre twin-turbo engine, and it pushes out 450 horses. That's 20 more than the old GTS and 30 more than the current generation Carrera S. Already quite a potent motor.
There's more torque on offer as well, 405 point something, basically 406 pound-foot. And I will freely admit that does make the GTS sound like a very spicy proposition. In fact, all of the 911 GTSs can do at least 186 miles an hour. If you want the fastest one on the top end, you actually want to go for the rear-wheel drive manual. That'll do 194 miles an hour. 194 miles an hour, that's insane, and it's the cheapest GTS. Admittedly, cheapest is a relative term because, well, it's £95,000 before you start putting options on it.
And the fastest accelerating GTS is actually the all-wheel drive with a PDK. 0 to 62 takes 3.6 seconds. Let's put that into perspective. A 911 Turbo S hits 62 in 3.3 seconds. Maybe adding a couple of turbos to the 911 isn't as bad as the purists think it is, because that's some serious grunt. Grunt that can manage up to 34 mpg, allegedly.
All of the 911 GTSs get the wide body from the all-wheel drive 911s. They look wider and meaner. They're also lower than the standard 911s, and you even get centre-locking wheel hubs, like what you get on race cars.
And because GTS is becoming more trim package than special thing, you get special badges, smoky headlamps, sport chrono, and many other things to make people who don't have the readies feel bad about themselves.
So I'm in the Targa GTS. It's all-wheel drive and it's got the same engine as all the other GTSs. I absolutely adored the last generation GTS and the one before that. They were truly special. They were naturally aspirated. This is turbocharged. What's changed? What's different? What's new? Well, the torque. Man, the old one, you had to rev the knackers off it to get anything from it. But this, you just bang it down a couple of gears and oh look, there's some torque. Off we go. The gearbox itself, we've got the PDK here because let's face it, that's all people are going to buy because you may say you want a manual, but no one votes with their checkbooks anymore. So PDK it is. Thankfully, Porsche's PDK gearbox is fantastic. It's so quick to react. The power delivery is amazing. There's little to no turbo lag. And this thing does fly. It doesn't sound like a naturally aspirated car. We knew that was going to be a thing. It still sounds pretty fruity, especially with the roof off. It doesn't half make a good racket. And when you're properly on it, you do get a little bit of that Porsche howl, but it is slightly overtaken because of the turbochargers. It is a bit of a shame, but at the same time, this thing isn't supping fuel at the rate that a normal naturally aspirated car would. Now, we've got the all-wheel drive with the Targa. You can't get a rear-wheel drive Targa. Here's the thing. Earlier I went to a racetrack and they gave me a quick go in the rear drive coupe, again with PDK. And the rear drive is the sweeter of the two. That said, this still handles really well. The steering is simply magic. It feels so lovely. Yes, it's not all hydro assisted, it's electrically assisted, and that offends the Porsche purists, but I'm not a racing driver, and neither are a lot of the people who are going to buy this. You can punt it into a corner, it'll let you know you're doing something wrong with a touch of understeer. You can correct it, you can control it and steer it on the throttle really nicely, and then away you go. And you can get so much power down as you leave a corner. There's so much grip in this thing. It's maddeningly good. We haven't got carbon brakes on this, we've got the regular iron brakes. And you know what? They still work pretty well. That said, with a bit of track work, they were getting a bit honking, so maybe don't go nuts with them if you're going to take this to a track. Sport Plus makes this the car you really want it to be, so everything becomes sharper, it hangs onto gears longer, the suspension stiffens up, the active exhaust sings the song of its people, and its song is good. It's a happy, happy song of dinosaurs burning or something like that. It does have a sport response button. It's just in the middle here where all the driving and changing modes are. So you press it and you will hear the car become extra cross. Ready? Sport response. Pins you in the back of your seat. It also puts you dangerously close to losing your license. You also get, as standard, all the Sport Chrono stuff and the infotainment system. The infotainment's straight out of the 991.2, which means it works and it's brilliant, and there's CarPlay and all that guff. It feels really good. Like, there are a couple of little things that irk me. The roof, when you put it up and down, feels a bit wobbly. The visibility, when you're trying to look over your shoulder, because there's that epic roll hoop, you can't really see much. And yeah, the all-wheel drive does make it not quite as sharp as it could be. If it were my money, coupe, manual, rear drive, done. But there are a few greater joys in life than a Porsche 911 on a beautiful country road. And the GTS car is the one I'd have.
The many Porsche purists are quick to decry anything that changes their beloved cars, even if they've never owned or driven one, which confuses me quite often. When I drove the 991.2 Carrera S, I pondered that its new turbochargers hadn't necessarily ruined the car, but had changed its character, and it made it sound a bit cack. Does the spirit of the original GTS, and those that succeeded it, live on in this one?
In a word, yes. Though turbochargers have changed the nature of the 911, made it less raucous and a little easier to drive quickly, the tweaks made to the GTS cars make it just that little bit better, and frankly, a better all-rounder. It is most certainly related to the GTSs of old.